If the internet works. There we go. Now we're live. So, hey everyone tuning in. We're broadcasting on my personal Facebook page for TJ Lombardi. We're also broadcasting on the Dying Breed series Facebook page. So, I'm super excited for our interview, our hangout session today, because I have the amazing Jenna M. George. Um, Jenna, do you want to go ahead and kind of introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, first off, thank you so much for having me, TJ. Um,
Absolutely.
I have always had a passion for writing. It's something that I've always found as an escape for me. Um, Now, currently, I am still writing as well as I'm going into education. I want to teach middle school, like language arts and reading. Um, but it's been something that's been a safe space for me for as long as I can remember. So I'm really
Mm,
happy to have published my first book, and I hope there's more coming.
nice. Excellent. All right. So yes, everyone, if you haven't seen A Break in the Trees, this is it. Okay, so let's talk about how Jenna and I got connected. So I think it was maybe end of September, early October of last year. I am driving for a private company, which was like an Uber, but this area of the Phoenix Valley had terrible service from Uber and Lyft drivers because it was so far out there. So this company was very predominantly used to drive people to and from the airport. So I got the orders normally the night before of like, hey, TJ, here's your stops. Here's the clients you're picking up. And I pick up this wonderful family. We start driving. And I don't know, Jenna, did they ever tell you about this like monsoon storm?
No, they
Okay.
left that part out.
So I pick up the George family and we start driving, and they were really, I think, a little worried, like, hey, can we get to the airport in time? Do you think you can drive a little fast? And I'm like, well, safety is my number one concern. They're, of course, oh, we're from Chicago. You do you. You don't worry about that. I was like, all right, here we go. So we start driving, and of course, normally conversations naturally happen in the van. We start to, have a good time of sharing where we're from, what we're doing. And I, of course, say, well, I'm kind of this aspiring author. I'm going to be coming out with a book soon. And Jenna's mom says, oh, my daughter wrote a book. I was like, really? Okay. So we start talking a little bit about that. And sure enough, we start going, and then the warning signs happen through the phones of like, hey, be advised to monsoon's coming through. And I see the monsoon and I'm like, man, that's a pretty good one. Like, that's pretty solid. But I'm fine. I am comfortable driving through it. So we start going, and the van was a little tense. I'll just say it that way. The van was very tense, a little bit of anxiety, but I'm just like cruising on a Sunday afternoon, happy as can be. So we get to the airport. We didn't really make it fast because of the traffic and the weather, but I pulled over and I said, all right, George family, no, sorry, I couldn't get you here fast enough. And they're like, nope, that's fine. Nope, we got here good. They were so happy to get out of the van and to get onto their flight. But yeah, so they told me about Miss Jenna's book, and I, of course, picked it up, wanted to support another fellow indie author. And I have to say, I was blown away. And when I say that, I want to think I want to emphasize, when you have a writer who can write a story in a genre that I would not personally read or pick up, um, and they have you captivated, they pull you into the story, and I was hooked. I was like, this shows how great of an author this young woman is. Um, we have our first question. So, Miss Geneva, we'll get to that in a second. So that's where for me, I was like, this girl can write. She has got skills, because I reached out to Jenna on Instagram and I'm sending her messages as I read the book. And I think I was getting to the point where I was like, don't you do this to me, Jenna. Don't you do this.
Yeah,
Everly,
we
this and
were.
this has to happen. So I was like, this girl can write. We need to talk. We need to find out more about her story. So that's how Miss Jenna and I got started and connected. So let's go to everyone who's tuned in, if you guys have questions for Miss Jenna or myself, There's the StreamYard link at the very top there. Go ahead and click access to it. It'll allow us to see who's asking questions as we do our author AMA. So I'll click on here. Miss Geneva says, "Hey guys, Jenna, you are a new author to me. What books should I check out, and do they come in audio?"
So I have only written one book so far. It's called A Break in the Trees. I published it in April of 2022. Yeah, April 2022. I'm like losing my timeline here. And I self-published it. This book does not come in audio. I am working on that. I've gotten that request a lot. But you can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. It's available on Kindle and Nookbook, but not yet audio, unfortunately.
So for you guys as well, if you don't know more about Jenna, all of her links are in the description for the video. So you can find her on Instagram. We've got her Twitter, Facebook, website, the links to Amazon. I did not do the Barnes and Noble. I didn't think so. But you guys can go ahead and click on there, and that should take you right to her stuff. So, okay.
Thank you, Geneva.
Yes, thank you. And she says, awesome. She will check it out. So yes, Miss Geneva is amazing. She is like a big sister to so many of us indie authors, especially in the lit RPG. So thank you, Geneva. Okay, so Jenna, my first question for you is, you kind of already answered it, and I really think you had a creative way of saying how you got started, but how did you get started into writing? And then when in your life did you get the inspiration to write A Break in the Trees?
So one of my dearest friends and I, when we were probably like freshmen in high school, we used to sit in her bedroom with these composition notebooks, and we would create stories about our lives, but we would change the names, and we would change it in ways where, oh, we wanted something to happen today that didn't happen, so we would like write it in the version of a story. And we both got super invested in it. I have tons and tons of composition notebooks filled to the brim from when I was like 13, 14, 15 years old, of these like made up stories. And I always knew that I liked writing. I always would journal, but that's the moment I realized I really liked writing creatively.
Okay.
And fast forward a couple years, my cousin had told me about National Novel Writing Month. And she knows that I love writing, and she had done it one year, and she ended up getting her book. She didn't get it published, but she did get it binded. So I remember when I was in 7th grade, I read her binded copy, and I felt like the coolest person in the world because it was the only one in existence.
Right.
So I would like show my friends, be like, "Oh, look, no one else can have this." Like there's just one. So she had done it years before, and in November of 2020, like probably like October of 2020, she told me about it. She's like, "It's just a challenge. You write 50,000 words in a month and see if you can do it, and you can track your progress and X, Y, and Z, whatever." And so I was like, "Oh, I definitely want to do this." So I contacted my friend, who were the same one that we used to sit and write in these composition notebooks. And I told her about it, and I said, "I'm going to do it. I thought of you." And she said she would do it too. And it was kind of amazing because we spent so much time that month, that November, writing together, but writing totally different stories. And we kind of challenged each other in a sense where, end of October, we each came up with 3 plots. And I gave her my 3, and she gave me her 3, and we picked each other's plot, like that we wanted the other person to write. And in my head, I wanted to do A Break in the Trees. So it worked. I mean, it worked out well. But that's what she ended up picking, and she completed the challenge. She wrote an entire book herself too. She hasn't published it yet, but we both did it, and it was nice to have that person because we would sit. We would come up with goals like, okay, we each write 5,000 words, and then we'll edit each other's 5,000 words. So we were kind of doing 2 things at the same time, and it kept us both motivated.
Right.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I love that idea. And I think one thing that I really love too, that you kind of keyed in on, it sounds like a very big journaler.
Yeah, still am too.
Okay. So Would you say like that was one of the ways that you found, because you have such great emotional depth in your story.
Thank you.
So, do you feel like a lot of that journaling early on in life really allowed you to learn ways of self-reflecting, ways of, conveying those emotions that you then just translated over as an author?
Absolutely. I
Okay.
mean, even now, like, I would say no more than like 3 months ago, I was actually flipping through some of my old journals, and I
Mm.
was reading some of the entries, and I'm like, "Wow, that's like a sentence I would, like, write in a book now." So I think
Mhm.
some of the things that I portrayed in my journals, I was I mean, I was in high school, I was so dramatic, but I wrote it very dramatically. So I think that helped me a lot in terms of, like, turning everything into, like, a putting a creative twist on it.
Is this like, mom and dad like pouring wine like, "Oh, she was dramatic, all right." She was
Absolutely,
a handful.
100%. I still am dramatic, I'll admit it.
Okay. Okay. Hey, that's so much fun. And I love this thing, you had an accountability partner when you started, and it was also someone that sounds like you really grew your writing skills together early on. And so this is just a natural progression of your skill sets together. Which is kind of what I found with myself now. Um, with a few other authors. There's one or two of us that, we stay connected behind the scenes. We have our own like writing competitions with each other individually. We bounce ideas off of, we do video chats of, hey, this is what I'm thinking. So I think as authors, it's always great to have that person who can challenge you, but also believes in you.
Yeah, and I think that we compromised each other really well in that way, and I mean, we definitely motivated each other, and I think we still do.
Yeah,
I don't think I would've, like, gone through with publishing or I don't know if I'd be at this point without having her support and her help throughout that whole process too.
sure. So, and I love this idea that you both came up with three different plots, and then the other person picked the plot.
I think too, when we decided to do that, I don't think we knew that we were actually gonna go through with it. Like,
Okay.
I don't think that we like, from that moment, I remember sitting in Starbucks and us exchanging our ideas, and I don't think in that moment in time, I thought that I could actually do it. I really doubted myself. I didn't
Yep.
think that I could actually write, 50,000 words in the month of November. I ended up writing, like, 80,000, and I was
Nice.
done by November 26th. So I was like, "Wow, I really love this."
That's so awesome. So, okay, maybe we can sprinkle a little hints here. So you wrote 3 plots. Is there any potential future with those other 2?
Um, I toyed with one of the other 2 a little bit, but
Okay.
then I fell in love with a new idea and a new story, and I'm, like, very tail end of finishing the first draft with it, and I like it. I like it a lot. I'll just say that
Okay.
I like it a lot.
Okay. Okay, so let's not get too much into that. So we got a little taste of potentially a great future story to read, which I love. I absolutely love it. But my next question was, you have 4 characters, main characters that are all coming together, Miss Everly May, Leo, Addie, and Benji. So, where did you draw inspiration for these 4 main characters? And is one of them you? Or is there like, do you kind of resonate with one of them more than the others?
I definitely like, there are hints of me thrown into Everly everywhere. Little details that someone who doesn't know me would never pick up on or would never realize. But there are so many little things or like things that she does or things about her personality that I took from my life, like my everyday life.
Okay.
Um, the boys, honestly, they don't come from anyone. I just kind of combined any experience or knowledge I've had. Like, I wanted them very different. So I
And you nailed that. Let's just put it that way. You nailed it.
thank you. That was a challenge for me. I didn't want to write them too similarly.
Well, it was one of those. So I don't want to give spoilers because you definitely need to pick up this book. It's beautifully written, but these two boys, to put it in they're complete opposites. But if you've seen guys together, it's just like you understand. It makes sense. There's a bond, a connection, a friendship there between those guys where it's like, I don't know how this works, but it also makes sense.
I'm glad
So
you think so.
yeah, no, I loved it. So okay, so there was no real inspiration or maybe personal connections that you used for the boys, but your other female character, Addie, was that kind of another play with you and your friend who are writing, or how did you
So
develop that?
Addie was interesting because I was 100% convinced when I finished the book that I had zero inspiration for her. And then every one of my friends, like literally every single one of my friends who read the book asked me if I based Addie off of them.
Oh
So I
wow.
think subconsciously, I combined every single one of my friends and I put Addie and I put them into Addie a little bit, like little the good parts of Addie.
I was
The
about to
good parts
say.
of Addie. Let me just clarify. Um, but it's not something that I consciously did, but then when the first time I got it, I was like, "No, what are you talking about?" And then I got it from 4 of my like my 4 closest friends. I got that question. I was like, "Huh, maybe I did. Maybe I
Yeah,
did put little pieces of all of you and I didn't realize." But
sure.
I guess it came naturally because Everly was so closely connected with me as a person that I think a
Mhm.
lot of the conversations might have been similar to conversations that I had or things that I experienced, or her mannerisms might have been very similar to something one of my friends would do. So I don't
Mhm.
know. I thought it was really interesting
Sure.
afterwards.
Okay. All right. So the next question I have is, you had such incredible flow through your entire book. And it was like I was following Everly May around everywhere. And it was just like I was right beside her, like we're going on this adventure together. And I have two book series that I'm writing in. One's a third person, one's a first person. But when I read A Break in the Trees, I was like, this is flow. This is what it means to have flow and how to carry a reader through it. And so it's super inspiring to me and a great skill set to see you write that. So how did you kind of develop that flow? I mean, do you even know? Is it a natural thing or what?
I I don't think it flowed so beautifully the first, probably 9 times. I mean, I did, I think, 10 personal drafts on my own before I sent it off to an editor, and I think
Wow.
every time I was like, no, like, this whole part is horrible, it needs to go," or, "I need to add this whole thing." I don't think it flowed as naturally initially. I'm very pleased and happy to hear that you think it does now, because that was something that was really important to me.
Mhm.
Flow and setting the scene in high pressure situations were the 2 things that I think that I thought that I had trouble with, and I
Okay.
worked really hard on as the drafts continued.
It's insane to me to hear you say, "Yeah, I went through like 10 drafts."
10. I have all 10 copies in my Google Drive, and it's crazy to see how much they changed.
So, I don't I don't even comprehend how you had the mental energy or even emotional energy to go through a manuscript 10 times to be like, "Okay, now we can send this off."
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a
How
lot. It was overwhelming a little bit, but also I think I learned a lot every time I read it again. Like,
Okay.
at first, some of my chapters were like, I mean, they would probably equate to like 40, 50 pages. And
Mhm.
I'm like, "Who wants to read that?" And so that was one of those kind of things that didn't change until draft 9, like, that they stayed that long all and I'm like, What am I thinking?" I had this idea in my
Mm.
head that I wanted certain things to happen in certain chapters, and I finally talked myself out of it. I'm like, That's insane. Like, these need to be shorter." So there are so many different things that I learned every time I went through it.
Okay.
But it was very that I think that I mean, that's why it took so long to publish after finishing November 26th of 2020. I didn't publish it till April 1st, 2022. So
So
it
a
was a lot
whole
of
year you were just working on this thing, polishing it up.
mhm.
How many times did you doubt yourself?
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Who was your biggest supporter during that time to really help you believe in yourself?
Oh, my mom.
Yeah.
My mom, she was every time I would finish a draft, she's like, "You did it again?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did it again." And she actually read draft 4 for me and gave me some good feedback, and
Okay.
then she read it again after, like, draft 10, and then I published it.
Okay.
So, she always had my back, she always knew what to say, and she believed that I could do it, I think more than I believed I could do it.
I think that's such a critical part when you're starting on this journey to writing, because I was in the same boat with you where it was really Lucas Clark, my now development editor for the Dying Breed series, who believed in me more than I believed in myself. I believed in the story. I was like, dude, the Dying Breed is a cool story, but I don't believe in myself and my skills. And he just kept pushing me like, no, dude, you're good. Keep going, keep going. So, yeah, having that support structure, that support system is huge. So,
It's so important.
so you, so we're gonna kind of deviate here and go into a question a little earlier than what I planned, but you brought it up where every manuscript revision, you oh, look at who's tuning in. Sounds fake, but okay. Nah, dude, it's all you, bro. Love you, big guy. Yeah, so book 2 is dedicated to Lucas. Because man, I wouldn't be at book 2 if it wasn't for Lucas. So, the people are who are support system, they're clutch. So you wrote these revisions, you were going through it, and you said you kept learning. What were some of those key aspects of the learning process that you can recall?
I think a huge thing for me was accepting writer's block for what it was. Like, there were some days
Mm,
where I mean, in the beginning, especially where I started beating myself up, I'm like, I know what I want to happen, but I can't get there. I don't know how to get there. And I was going crazy. But as I kept going throughout the process, I'm like, it's okay to not know. Like, instead of sitting there and forcing myself to write something, I need to disconnect for an hour, 2 hours, the rest of the night, whatever it takes to give the story what it needs. Because me
mhm,
trying to get somewhere that's not working isn't helping me. It's not helping the story, it's just stressing me out. So that was the biggest takeaway that I've definitely applied to this book, the new coming book, more than I did the first one, because the first one I just let myself get frustrated. But now I'm like, if I don't know what to write, I need
right.
to take a break.
So that was your technique that worked for you, was once you hit the wall, step away, decompress, let it breathe. Did you find, was there a certain amount of time that helped you, or was it just kind of depending on what the wall was?
It depended on the wall for sure. I
Okay.
mean, in this one, I don't wanna talk too much about the new one, but that's the only thing that I'm kind of applying, like, actually learning the lesson for, was, like,
Mhm.
I literally took a 2-month hiatus
Oh, wow.
because I genuinely like, the story in itself was very complex, and I knew how I wanted it to end, but I
Mhm.
couldn't get there to save my life. And I knew that I needed to just disconnect and work on other writing projects instead of like forcing it. And then literally one day out of the blue, I woke up, I'm like, oh my God, I know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
And I grinded out like 10,000 words. And it was like that.
Nice. Yeah.
So I think it just depended. It depends on the wall for sure.
Okay. What I've found for me, especially in the writing and when I hit the wall, is I will either try to push through, and it's just putting a sentence at a time, right? The most basic thing you can, or I will go for a run or a walk. And, here in Arizona, like today, it was 103 degrees. I still went out there and walked for an hour outside. But when I've found where when I'm stressed or when I'm writing, a good run, jog, something, I don't know where it comes from, but then all of a sudden it's like that spark. I'm like, boom, oh, there it is. Okay, sure. And it's definitely helped me. So I think it's one of those things where don't give up hope, just keep grinding away, and eventually you're gonna find that. So
I'm gonna try that.
yeah, why not? Can't hurt, right? I mean, the wall's gonna be there until you figure out a way around it.
Exactly. It's gonna be there whether I want it to be there or not. So let's try to alleviate it in a different way.
Okay. So writer's block was a big thing. What was there any other things that you started to see in the writing process?
I think just how much the story itself changed. Like I went
Oh,
through my outline probably like a month or two after I published A Break in the Trees. I went through that like my initial outline and I couldn't even believe it because it was a different story. And I think the characters kind of just end up taking on this like life of their own and anything that
yes.
you had planned in your head, it doesn't really matter because ultimately they're the ones making the decisions, not you. And you don't realize it at the time you're planning.
Yes.
You don't know these characters yet. So that was one thing that I accepted and I kind of loved it because I'm like, this isn't me, this is them. Like it just it works. And I learned pretty early, just because you had an idea doesn't mean that's how it has to that's how it has to go. Like other things can happen instead. And if the story takes you there, let it. See if you like it, see where it goes.
That's so huge too because okay, so before I go there, so did you fully plan out a whole outline like, step by step, here's what it's going to go, or was it like, here's where I'm starting, here's where I'm ending, and we're just going to go on the roller coaster until we get there?
I did like a nine. Have you seen the 9 step like plot dot?
Uh-uh.
So it's like it's through National Novel Writing Month's website, and
Okay.
it's 9 questions about your plot, like, entry, regular day for your main character, rising action, a problem that happens, something gets worse, and then it's like 9 different overall questions of like the order that you want your like the book is supposed to go. And
Okay.
that 9 step outline is a book, I promise you, that doesn't exist.
Mm.
Like it changed dramatically. And I forgot like what I wrote on there because then I'm reading it after I published it and I was like, whoa, this was my idea.
Yeah.
It was
But
crazy.
I would probably say or guarantee that the finished product is what you love the most compared to the original idea.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think you definitely hit on it too, especially when you start out writing. It's like, okay, this character is gonna do this, or you're writing. But as you start going and as you start getting into it more, that character starts to live in your head. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, Gogoth would not do that. Gogoth would go over here and do this. You're like, oh shit. All right, dude. I'm not gonna argue with you. So was there a certain character that you can recall that really pushed that on you and you're like, okay, this is how it's gonna go?
Benji.
Oh, okay.
His whole character arc um pushed it a lot because I don't want to give like too much of a spoiler, but I really wanted him to be a total jerk the entire time.
Douche canoe.
Yeah, and it didn't. He did like he once I wrote more about him and
Hmm.
I learned more about his background and his backstory and his life. I'm like, "Wait, there are reasons for this. We got to give him a little arc here." And it just happened. It just
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
I
He,
tried
he
not to let it, but it didn't work.
that's a very interesting take. Cause yeah, there was yeah, I don't want to give spoilers, guys. You just have to read this book. But there's times where I'm like, oh, nope. Nice. Okay. So let's see here. Guys, if you have any questions for Jenna, please feel free to type them in. Um all right, I'm trying to read over 'em. I think the biggest thing. Oh, okay. Uh so one of the biggest things that I really drew out of the story is the friendship aspect of it. the core meaning of friendship, and there are some things in the story that I think would test any friendship beyond, to the limit, past the line, whatever you want to say. Was that kind of the core intention of the book, or did you just find it like, wow, this is really what this book is truly about?
I think that's a good question, because I think that it has the answer can go in multiple different directions.
Okay.
Um, there are certain things that happen, like I don't want to like I don't want to say too much. The overall problem, the whole purpose was to show like how bad things can get, and like the people around you are either gonna like help you through it, or they're gonna, be your downfall, or are you gonna learn to work together, or are you gonna let another force drag you apart? And
Hmm.
so that message for sure was about like staying close, and like a message of true friendship. Then there's another message in there, I think, where Everly specifically kind of learns that like she kind of grows up really fast. And I don't
Facts.
think this is much of a spoiler, but of the four friends, and this was an interesting take, but of the four friends, she's the main character, and
Mhm.
she has the least trauma, like the least traumatic background. So
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
that she's more of, I think in general, naturally, she's just like a little bit more of a baby about stupid things, which
Huh.
sounds silly, but that's kind of what I get from her. I'm
Okay.
kind of a baby about stupid things too sometimes. Um, but with her particularly, she had a big blow up fight at the beginning of the book with someone for something that happened that like never should have happened, and it was really crappy. But then my message for like with her throughout the story was, look at the bigger picture here.
Yep.
What's the situation that matters more? What's more important to you? Can you overcome like that one thing that, yeah, that sucked, but this sucks more? Can you overcome that? Can you forget about that?
Hmm.
Or not
Yep.
forget about it, but just kind of accept it, and
Accept it. Yep.
don't let that affect you, and work together with the person that hurt you, because your situation is a lot more colossal now than it was before.
Right. And obviously, because I've read the book, I know what happens. Like, you really push that kind of mature thing of like, you could have taken it two ways. You could have gone to the left, and it's like, temper tantrum to the max extreme, and nope, I'm burning it all down. But you went to the right, where it's like, you know what? There are bigger things at play. There is this bigger depth of a friendship. And am I going to continue to do this? Am I going to accept what happened? Am I going to continue to be the strong bond? Because clearly this person needs me right now with everything that's going on. So am I going to be the weak link in the chain that lets it all fall apart?
And that's the story I wanted to tell with her in particular.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. It was so well done. And
Thank you.
you had some, now that as I'm thinking about it, because I want to say there's a dance scene, like where they go to a dance, they go to a club,
Yeah.
and you have some chemistry there that was really, because I'm not a club person. I will go to a sports bar to watch sports, and of course the Bears lose. But
Ooh,
um I know,
TJ.
burn. Go Lions, man. Championship
Oh,
2023 this year. Let's go.
TJ.
um you really captured some great chemistry there, and how you have flirtation, you have temptation, you have using the interpretation of the scene for your benefit for those gazing eyes. So is that like, how did you even capture that whole scene?
I'll just say that particular chapter was the easiest thing I think I've ever written in my life.
Oh, okay.
And I think it was because that's a real bar.
All right,
Yeah.
see you there.
And it's a was able to write it in a way where I didn't have to do research for one. I spent so much time doing so much research about. I never been in one. You know, like,
That was actually my next question.
so there were so many aspects to it that made it right because it's not a
Yeah, so your book, that's a great way to segue into it. Your book is based in Hawaii. Why did you choose Hawaii, and how many countless hours did you spend going to Google Maps or Google Earth to look at all these locations and places?
Hawaii is somewhere. Can you hear me okay?
You are getting just a little bit muffled, but I can still hear you enough if I listen up.
Yeah, it's muffled on my end too. Okay. Can you hear me better?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. Hawaii. Okay. I've always wanted to go to Hawaii, but when I started writing the book, I did not think that I would actually publish it. So I was like, oh, this is fun. You know, this is gonna be awesome because I can pretend that I'm there vicariously through these people. And that was a decision I ended up regretting drastically because the amount of research that I had to do, like something as simple as, you know, is there a parking lot at Atlantic Beach? Because initially I had that there was a parking lot there, and there's no parking lot there. So like I'm like on Google Maps looking at things, and I'm trying to make it as accurate as possible, and it was hard. It was really hard.
Yeah, I mean, you had so much detail in there, and I'm not gonna lie, I totally copied you for writing my second book series to where I'm like going through Google reviews, Yelp reviews, and I'm like, oh, the steak is really good, and you know, Lauren was a great hostess. Okay, well, this character is named Lauren, and she's a great hostess. So but I did wave a little bit where when I picked an area. Our audio is getting a little distorted. Sorry, guys. Internet. I would more than likely say it's an internet issue. When I got to a certain point in my book, and I just was like, well, there's no subdivision here on this GPS coordinate, but there is now in the book. So here we go. So now is there a Hawaii trip in your future?
Honeymoon.
I was curious. So Miss Jenna is engaged to her boyfriend. Congratulations. So I was just really curious. Is this going to be the honeymoon location? So
Absolutely.
I'm sure you knew that going into this. So. Okay. So now you did mention you're working on book 2. It's in the works. Is there a certain location that you picked out that this is kind of taking place?
So this one, I wanted to make a location overall. I have it taking place in Florida, but it's a made up town.
Oh, okay.
So that's a lot less research.
That's awesome. Okay, let's see here. So, were there a lot of authors that you read growing up that you kind of drew inspiration from? Or were there certain books that you grew up reading as a kid or read now that you kind of lean more towards?
I think maybe a little bit. I had took a bit of a hiatus from reading while I was writing, so I wasn't drawing any inspiration from like stories that I'd read, but I always knew that I liked the genre. So now when I read a book, I'm like, oh, this is like I totally like did something like this, or oh, I totally want to do something like that. Now I'm thinking about it, whereas before I wasn't really thinking about it because I wasn't writing and reading at the same time. If that makes sense. Like I stopped reading and then I was writing, and now I'm writing and I'm reading and I'm doing all of these things, and I'm drawing a lot more inspiration now than I was then.
Okay, that makes total sense. I know there's a lot of times where when I'm writing, I'm like, I am not reading. I'm writing, and that's all I want to do, and that's all I have the energy to do. So I understand that. Here's an interesting question then for you, and feel free to answer as honestly as you want. Now that you are a published author, you have a badass book. So sorry if it's good looking. It's a badass book. How many people have come to you and just said, "Hey, will you read this now? Will you give me your thoughts on this?" Has that happened at all?
No.
Interesting. Okay.
My sisters always asked me to edit their papers for school. They've been doing that since I was like 15, so that's an accomplishment.
Okay. That's interesting. I know, at least for me, there's been a few people who have reached out and said, will you read this for me? And there's times where it's like, okay, I will dedicate, 10,000 words or 20,000 words of this manuscript. Here's what the feedback I can give you, and then I've got to move on. There are some other authors where I'm like, yeah, I would go to read this, or I'll read this for you, help you out as best as I can, because you're a great person, right? So that's interesting. Okay, so now you are currently assisting teaching in a creative writing class. Any interesting stories or things inspirational-wise that you've seen from students where you're like, wow, that's shocking or surprising or inspirational?
So I just started, the class just started yesterday, was the first day.
Oh, never mind. So,
no, not yet. But I'm sure that I will get inspired and wow, because kids are a lot more talented than we give them credit for.
Absolutely. So you bring up this great point where there's a podcast, and the podcast presenter said, if you look at some of the greatest entrepreneurs in a decade or lifetime, they were all childlike. They were not childish in their attitude, demeanor, whatever. They were childlike in the fact that they never stopped asking questions. They never stopped being curious or investigating, trying to get to the bottom of it. So I think, there's so many times we want to be challenged on any type of subject. Teach it to like a group of 5 to 8-year-olds, and you're going to get questions that not even college professors would ask you. But it pushes you to a point of understanding. So
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy. I did an assignment with my 7th and 8th graders today where I had them all ask a question, and it could have literally been anything, not about school, like just anything. I mean, I got things from, are aliens real, to how do we know how big outer space is if we've never been there? There was like so many different, like, what is my dog about? Just like very different questions. And it shows that these kids, they really are curious and they have these, I don't know. It's just, it was really interesting to see that.
yeah.
That was today. That was cool.
So you're already writing book 2. We don't want to get into a whole bunch of spoiler territory. So is there anything else, like ideas, kind of things that you're, okay, I'm going to plant this right here. I'm going to water it over time, genre-wise, plot-wise, subject matter-wise that you want to dive more into for a future book 3, 4, 5, etc.?
I think what I like about the one that I'm writing now is the age of the main characters. They're 16 and 17.
Okay.
I like that they're younger. I found like 22, 23 to be a little bit more challenging for the like kind of like the voice of the story. Like I wanted it to be for like high schoolers, but high schoolers can't really relate to 22, 23-year-olds. But those kids in the story in A Break in the Trees couldn't be in high school because of all of the extenuating circumstances and where they were living, and there were moments to that. So I think going with like a way of combining what I love about the story and just making it a little younger. But I love the genre. If you like the kind of like suspense, thriller, young adult.
Okay, so that was going to be one of my questions as well. Is are we going to see some of these characters return from A Break in the Trees in book 2? But it sounds like nah.
No, I think A Break in the Trees was a one-hit wonder. And I
Oh,
think
it was a banger. Like on the table, it's amazing. You don't even need anything else. So.
thank you. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think there's gonna be any more from that one. Maybe a prequel, maybe. I've toyed with it.
Well, I mean, I loved the ending. I thought the ending was beautifully written, and you could easily make a second one with how you ended that with one or two characters and how it turns out. So, an adventure overseas or something of that nature. But okay, so for the setting for 2, then at least is there other locations that you would love to dive into for book 3 or 4 or future stuff?
Honestly, no, not that have crossed my mind so far. I think for me, a lot of the time, I need to have a plot in my head, and when I know that general idea, then I'm like, oh, this location's cool, or this location's cool, or somewhere like that's like cold in the winter, or like that's kind of how I'll do it. But as of right now, I don't have any like really ideas.
Okay. All right. Hey, that's totally fine. Because you never know when inspiration is going to hit. So, okay. Well, you guys, if you don't have any other questions, we're probably going to wrap up here soon. Let's see. So, we're close to script 2 being done. Is there any one, I want to be a beta reader. I don't care what anyone says. I want to read book 2 or beta read. But is there any projection or goal that you would like to see book 2 officially published and releasing?
I would love, I would love it like by the end of next summer. That's
Okay.
my goal.
Okay, that's fair because marriage, honeymoon. You could do it faster. The same. Neither can end good adventures. So, but yes, you guys, if you don't have any more questions, we'll hang out here for probably a couple more seconds. But Miss Jenna, Miss Jenna, is there anything else that you want to really talk about on the episode today?
No, I want to thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. I had a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So you are amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. You guys, seriously, I put in my Amazon review. It has my highest recommendation. It is a beautiful story, so well written. Definitely check this girl out. Give her a rating, give her a review, give her some love. And thanks everyone for tuning in. So we will catch you guys next time. And hopefully in book 2 releases, Jenna will be back to talk about that one. So. Oh, we got one.
Thanks, Mom.
Great. Thank you, TJ. Winner. Thanks, guys. So we will catch you guys next time.